Okay, we're going to look at this little video here. It's about 10 minutes long with me yapping through it. Might go 20. This is from a guy named Chester555. On one of my older videos about the Egyptians, I had literally, it's weird. It might happen to you, some of the other people that make the videos, like 7P7 and stuff too, but literally debunking him was what was on the video itself. And he wasn't trying to refute it. He acted like he didn't even see it and just blurted the crap out. Anyhow, the conversation went on, and then now he came back on and he said, refute this. So I had to jump to the site or whatever and try to refute it, I guess. And, so if this is all it takes, that's fine. I'm 7 seconds into it. He wasted the first 6 with another set of words up there that said you might have to pause it every once in a while. He apologizes. He also doesn't know how to use correct colors versus backgrounds, and so it's hard to see, but I'll read everything to you and then we'll go from there. He said I might have to pause it, and as soon as this popped up, I paused it because I feel like with what it says, he's going to go into that Count de Volney and try to give some reading or some old-time reading that's been debunked so many times before, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm really anticipating or hoping that he has something new to debunk that I might even have to look up, but that hasn't been debunked before, and I don't probably already have it in my bar up top, just sitting there all the time constantly. But let's look at this. Since the beginning of Egyptology around the 1820s, they had good reasons to understand that ancient, it needs to put a T on the end of that, ancient Egyptians came from black Africa, but they refused to believe it was true. No, they didn't have any good reasons to, but there were a couple of reasons thrown in their face, and due to a couple of mistranslations and seeing later admixed people and Arabics when they got there, somehow people made the leap that that's what used to be there in the older times. But nobody ever thought they were Negroids, except for a close few. Count de Volney is one of them, who, after reading the thing, he made some big remark about how we do slavery to these people, and they were a great people one time and stuff. Now, the sad thing that the Negroes never mention is that his brother totally refuted it, and he himself recanted once he actually got there and got to see what was going on and see the pictures on the wall and some mummies and their hair and stuff like that, and he was like, oh. But they never mentioned that. They like to mention only the part. It's like when they try to pick that part of the Bible that says, do not look upon me, O Israel, for I am dark yet comely. And they're like, oh boy. And, well, the next line says, for the sun hath looked upon me, so she's tanned. And Negroes really like to tell you that they don't tan in any way, shape, or form. And, of course, non-admixed Negroes are real dark. There's no tanning going on, and they act like they giggle through the sun, and that white people will catch fire like vampires. Yet Egypt is much, much more milder than Texas, where I am right now, even at nighttime. In fact, the nighttime temperature right now is about 92 degrees, and it did not even get up to 92 degrees in the Delta area, or Cairo, of Egypt today. So they really don't have any idea what they're talking about, but they have these talking points they like to yap about. Let's see if we can go into the Volney thing, although I've already beat it up, but hold on a second. Since the beginning of Egyptology, 1820s. Oh no, people were interested in it before that, and they made many treks. I'll see if I can give you one that you'll just shut the hell up about. Oh, how about how interested Napoleon was in it? And you could say, in a weird way, Egyptology, there's modern Egyptology, there's Egyptology, and in a way you could say that Alexander the Great and making of the great Library of Alexandria that they had created would be in some way Egyptology. Well, you could say they were studying it in Greek and putting it all together and trying to find as much stuff, and oh man, it's incredible what they came up with, and all the math and everything, and they had writing and stuff like that. Black people didn't have any of those things, much less a wheel or anything, but we'll get into that part later. Let's see what he says here. What does he go next? This is what they found. This is what they found, I guess, in the tomb of Ramesu III. Oh, he wants to be like, oh, I know a word and it means I used to be. You know, I can say some words in Eskimo. Ha. I can also speak a couple of languages. I can probably speak more Egyptian than you, and Sumerian. And Hebrew. But that doesn't mean anything. Ramses III. Oh, that's great because it's very obvious that he's a Caucasian. Well, he says it's very obvious. A is the common Egyptian himself, and C is the rest of Africa. Oh my God, they're going to put the tomb painting picture, and instead of doing that, they're going to do the one that's in Diop's book. Let's see. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, pegged it. Now, this is from him. Now, they have it cut off right here, but it does actually say the name of his book. It's there. I forget the name of it off my tab. You know, Born in Africa or some kind of crap. But, so, this is a painting for the tomb of Ramses, and he tries to say this is called an Egyptian. And this, B, is called an Indo-European. And this, C, is the other blacks in Africa. This one guy makes it. But would they ever have the same clothes on in any way, shape, or form? Wasn't it on purpose that they never did that to anybody with the Egyptians? You could tell from the dress. You can cut their head off and say, oh, this is a Libyan, and this is this. In fact, this is a Libyan with the open dress. What's missing from it is some of the tattoos that are on him, but Egyptians had tattoos and they had tattoos. Tattoos don't show up on these people. The earliest Egyptians and some of the women and stuff in there and everything had tattoos. They found quite a few of them on the Egyptian mummies now. In fact, one famous one, Ginger, the pre-dynastic Badarian mummy, which has curly blonde hair. That's why it's called Ginger. And you can tell he's a pale leucoderm. He's a Caucasian, even with blonde hair. And he has tattoos on him. And about that same time, it's weird, Ötzi, the Iceman, has tattoos on him. Proto-Indo-Europeans, way out in that area, have tattoos on them and things. Yeah. It shows a connection that blacks don't have to any of this. But Egyptians have tattoos. And I'm as dark as... Still can't see it, huh? I'm as dark as anybody in that picture. He's a little, maybe a hair darker than him, about the darkness of his hands, but there's this side lock on him. So this is totally untrue, what he's trying to project here. For one thing for certain, this is in Ramses' tomb, and this is a procession of people who have been beaten by him in battle, and they are coming to pay him homage. And it's in his death tomb, so this is like they're paying homage to him in death because he got that ass. And what does this say? You know, I mean, what does this say? I can't hardly see. That's R. This is a mouth sign, R, T, and then people, multiple. So ret, that means men. That just means men. So probably a bunch more of these guys. But when they show the Nubians, there's usually this cross sash that's on them. By the way, they say whenever they show up, they're usually naked and they dress them, but they don't dress them in their dress. But is this what they even wore whenever they did that or whatever? I mean, are they stopping to take a photo? Nah, that's not happening. Well, what's this? NHSW, plural. So this is like Nahasu, and that's your Nubians right there. Oddly, Nahasu in Coptic still to this day means worthless. It's an expression. Oh, but black people in America would freak out if they, oh, that's the N-word of the Nubians. No, they called them troglodytes too. That means primitive, unaware cave or hole dwellers. Yeah, they call them a bunch of other names that I probably can't even say. But, you know, I think 7 Phoenician 7 did a video on a kala that just eats this up right here. Let's see if I can. So here's 7P's video. It's on a kala where he tries to say all this crap, you know. And what he's fixing to show is not the genuine article, and that's a recreation, a picture from 150 years ago. But that doesn't stop Afrocentrics. It's been debunked a long, long time ago, and then repeatedly after that. But that doesn't stop Afrocentrics. When they can, they depend on heavily European reproductions, as he is thrilled to point out. And yet, in the age of color photography, and the wall is still there, Afrocentrics favor this 150-year-old illustration like it's a trophy. Let's see that. Same thing.
And this is what we call today the portrait of the races. This is how the ancient Egyptians in 1200 BC, so 2,000 years later than the founding of their kingdom, saw the different groups of the world, according to the hieroglyphics. Figure A is the ancient Egyptians as they saw themselves.
No. Wait a second. According to
According
what?
To the hieroglyphics.
The hieroglyphics, you say? Or rather, is it based on how Diop and Van Sertima saw Egyptians? Why do you suppose Akala didn't tell his audience that he gathered ensuing texts from the books of racist black supremacists, Civilization or Barbarism by Annie Diop, that was his name, and Child of Africa was Sertima's name. Okay, so I mixed them up. Yeah, just like I said, in the side of his book, see, they cut off that picture right here, just pretty much the picture, right? And they have this little bottom part, but they did it differently on it and wrote the words in. But civilization or barbarism, okay, so that's it. Yeah, big arrow pointing right at it. One of the mainstays of Afrocentrics. Ceaseless claims is that the ancient Egyptians were coal black. Yeah, hopefully you can see this. His face is just almost out of the thing, but yeah. They prop up a reproduction, which is called plate number 48, from Carl Lepsius's multi-volume report of inventories and documenting inscriptions and paintings and artifacts collected during 1842 to 1845, and this is in the tomb of Ramses the Third. And you can see them better now. Yeah. RT. This just means people. And this just means people. And that is Nahasu. And this is your Nubians. But it's funny that it looks more like the dress that they actually usually put on the Kushites. So that's strange because they usually have this side sash thing that cuts across. Doesn't look like this at all. But so there are several issues that need to be addressed and thoroughly broken down with plate number 48. Just so you understand what's going on and you don't try to say this lie anymore.
Figure A is the ancient Egyptians as they saw themselves.
Figure A is how the ancient Egyptians saw themselves. Well, what does it say right next to them? Because there's a glyph. R, yeah. T. Man, plural. RT, men. Men, people. RT, men. Yay! Hey, well, it's an easy word. If you gave me something like expialicalidocious, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But, this is what Egyptian would look like, or this. This is Kemet, and then there's people, and then the 3 lines means it's plural, or multiple, or a group of, etc., but not naming exactive name. If they just put 3, then it's kind of like in plural to do. But so that's definitely not the same thing. But wouldn't it be funny if the Egyptians would draw a picture of an Egyptian on the wall and he would write Egyptian next to it? or Kemet next to it. Why would he need to name who he is? He's naming the different groups of people he has power over and in beating. Yeah, and one is the Libyans, and one is the Akkadians. Yeah, and then there's the Nubians, and also the Cushites. But strangely, it does show them just to be like twins, but they are not in any way. Perhaps the Nubian had to wear a Cushite outfit. Let's just look farther into this. So yeah.
Figure A is the ancient Egyptians as they saw themselves. Can you see it goes right along with what the early Egyptologists thought? It goes right along with what the ancient Greeks thought. No one needs to be confused about what they thought.
Nobody's confused at all. In fact, we were just watching the other guy's video, which shows you that they weren't confused, but he said they could have gone with black people, but they didn't, and they wouldn't. But he acts like, oh, he's not so confused with it. I think it's because just before this, he said something about Herodotus, which I hope we get into here later. But we won't watch it from this one. We'll go back to the other video. But I'm just going to clear up this one picture. It's fairly important. If you remember, about 4 or 5 months ago, I did a video about this exact same thing. No confusing on the Egyptians. They said confusion stems from misunderstandings, deliberate misquotes, obfuscations, and a desire for lies to be true. To illustrate this pattern of confusion, let us turn to the statements of King Diop himself. That's just loud. And Professor Diop remarked that in the course of his introductory statement, he submitted a series and he said that these representing black people are showing characteristics of black people. And he was trying to compare it, the other guys were talking about, and they were comparing it to body shapes. Phenotype is basically the Greek statuary. For example, Professor Vaucouture said that numerous representations could be produced in which human beings were painted red than black. In fact, only the Nubians are really painted black. The Egyptians are painted red ochre. So they were painted red rather than black. But that Professor Diop would refuse to recognize these as non-black. Professor El-Naduri did not deny that there were black elements in the population of Egypt during the Old Kingdom, but said that it's seemingly hardly likely that the entire population was black. Now, this is the way it is in his book, but I'm sure El-Naduri was like, bullshit, they had some slaves and stuff, but you're not going to try to pull this kind of crap. This was from his UNESCO speech, 1981. I'm sure blacks are well familiar. They think it's some kind of God thing. Of course, if you look into it, he doesn't say it was West African primitives in any way, but he does try to claim the Senegalese somehow. Yeah. Now, Professor Vaucouture wondered why the Egyptians, if they did regard themselves as black, rarely if ever, in fact never hardly, I can't think of any. Oh, whenever they do the rebirth statue, whenever they are the Ka, they turn black, they make them black, but that is like, it meant to be like your shadow. I've done a whole video on that too and everything. It's the idea where ghost thing comes from, or whatever, he's your shadow, and this book of the dead that's in and the picture's always in and stuff is the book of coming forth by day. So like Peter Pan, you have your shadow and then you come forth by never mind, I can't explain it to you. But they never used carbon black in their representations of themselves, but used red ochre color instead. Professor Diop considered that this red color was indicative of the black Egyptian race, and that the yellow coloring of the womenfolk illustrated the fact to which attention had been drawn by American anthropologists, that women in a number of racial groups of Caucasians were, as a rule, of a paler hue than men. One way they notice this is all Greek art. They show the men quite often, not always, in red ochre and the women pale. Yeah. In fact, when they do that white, black, red art on things, they'll draw a lot of outlines and things in black, and the man will be red, and the woman will be the pale leftover. And the Greeks, and the Mitanni, and the Minoans, and the Etruscans, and all these related people in this area pretty much drew men in a tanner state. People don't understand it, but it was a Caucasian edict thing, and they show it in their artwork at the time. It's the men were supposed to do the work, and the women didn't have to. So they weren't going to toil out in the sun in fields and so often. And if you'll look, they're all men, usually working in the fields. They're the farmers, okay? And women stay pale. Women get to raise the child. It's a family unit. Blacks probably can't understand that nowadays either, with 75% or more. I think it's 78 are unwed mothers. But it has nothing to do with it. Now, what blacks avoid every time they try to show any picture in here is the yellow coloring and light coloring of womenfolk. And if he doesn't show some in a minute, I sure will. But a racial group studied were, as a rule, a paler hue than the men. That doesn't happen in Negroids. Yeah, because it's a tanning effect that goes on. Yeah. Now somebody's going to find a picture of a dark man and a admixed. No, that's silly. Stop. Let's continue. Professor Diop, he says, considered that this red ochre color was indicative of the black Egyptian race, and that the yellow coloring of the womenfolk illustrated the fact to which attention had been drawn by the American anthropologists. There you go. So Diop's saying the red ochre males and pale women are indicative of dark Negroes. Yeah. That just falls all apart. King of Canes concedes they were depicted red, and even after concession in his delusion, red is somehow magically black. Of course, he never explains how or why, and he never shows pictures of Nubians, or the picture of King Tut running over him with chariots, or his sandals, which shows Nubians or Negroids on them, so he can crush them with every step, even into the afterlife. Couldn't do that. It ruins his narrative that he's trying to present to lying racist black people. And he tells you that Figure 28 shows that the dark red color of the Egyptians is nothing but the natural skin color of the Negro. If it is typical for the Egyptians to be representative in a color officially called dark red, they say. No, the color is officially called red ochre. We use it to this day, yellow ochre and red ochre. It's paints that they developed. I've got a video that's about scribes, and it talks about how they make them, and they're insoluble in water and everything, and it's a secret that they pass down to father to son. And of course, the earliest scribes show that they've got these blue crystal eyes in them. Lots of statues with them too, and then reserve heads and everything in the earliest of dynasties. No, blacks want to. There's a lot of different ways they try to do it, but they say, well, they were just the Egyptians. Well, then they were there first. But then we have that ginger mummy, we have these other ones and stuff, and they hate black people. They ran into Nubian A colony right off the bat, killed them off, didn't see them again for over 400 years, and they ran into what we call Nubian C colony, and they banned them from being able to come into Egypt after fighting them again. And they were constantly pecking at the border rather than taking a good look and building their own place. People talk about Meroe and stuff up near Ethiopia, but that was built by Ramses too. He clearly says it. He built that as a stanchion in between. Yeah, he put governors in that area and everything. Yeah, in fact, Meroe is Cambyses' sister's name. That's the Persian, Aryan guys. Yeah. I wonder why it's named that. Could it be that they have something to do with the Ethiopians? The real Ethiopians that the Greek talked about, not some country that used to be called Abyssinia until recently that we talked about. but the Ethiopians of the Greeks. We'll probably get into that too. Let's continue. He even says there is no really black man in the exact sense of the word. Red is really black, but black does not exist. There goes those black Egyptians. Well, they're not black. They have the color of black and the soot, and they can make variations of it, and they've done it. In fact, whenever they show too many blacks in together, they will make them go back and forth with black and dark red and black and dark red, and it looks like they mix in coal or something dark into that red ochre color whenever they do it. But they do it for a contrast, so it doesn't just like a big mistake. They do it for women too, and the Egyptian women, slightly lighter, slightly darker, slightly lighter, slightly darker. Yeah, they do it for Egyptian men quite often too. But if they're not overlapping each other and stuff, they don't. And there's quite a few examples where they don't do this effect, but there's quite a few examples where they do it. In fact, that King Tut's chariot running over them, it shows the Egyptians finishing them off and sicking Canaanite hounds on them and things. And you can see some of them are red or black, and the other ones are black. But one thing's for sure, you can look at the phenotype and tell that that's a Negro, even from a little cartoon picture, very simply. He tries to tell you these settles for approximations, which he's just tap dancing there. They used black in their color quite often. The very fact that they painted the Nubians black is very obvious. They knew racial distinctions, drew phenotypes, and so do modern black populations. And what we have here on the left, this is Ramsey and Queen Ty, I believe is this picture here, and so you can see her there. And I'm that color there. Yeah, I'm an Irish guy, and I haven't even been out in the sun since last year. I mean, I swear, I haven't been outside. I really don't. And this is a Caucasian, and this is a Negroid. And the Egyptians are Caucasians. They know what they're doing. And you noticed that it was just a little lighter. She was a little lighter. He was a little, yeah. But no, there are ones that are darker than that. Oh boy, get all huffy puffy and freak out. Yeah, but the problem with that is, this is Ramses, and when they're a little darker than that, all red ochre is a oxide paint, and it'll oxidate, and it'll turn a little darker over time, just like wood does and things like that. You get a pine fence, or like they do the Queen Ty, they did the face. Everybody thinks she's wearing an afro, and it's a silver veil, but it was made out of yew wood back in the day. They had sacred trees. If you watch my videos that talk about yew wood and sycamore and all the sacred trees and the oaks, the Celts and everything, and tree worship, and it goes into the Bible and the sacred trees and everything. But and blacks don't have that. You know, that's not their religion. They're not mentioned in the Bible. They're not a part of it. They're not Hamites. Hamites is a division of the Caucasian race, just like it says. But the elites lived long enough to see the completion of their tomb, and they inspect the murals and everything, and they weren't going to let them pick themselves as Negroids or something. Now, Diop, Ventura, Akala, and this guy here would have you believe 3,000 years ago of temple and tomb depictions are all misrepresentations of Egyptian men and women, that they were all supposed to have looked like Negroids. But they don't. Blacks so desperately pick certain pictures out.
Tutankhamun in his own life. We've got to make up our mind. Was he jet black or was he red?
Seems pretty confused there himself. I'm not going to get into King Tut. We'll just go back into it. King Tut is a Caucasian. Of course, his DNA has been done, and he closest matches people of the Levant and early European farmers. So we won't be having any of that lies again. And let's get back to his picture here. Oh, look. I did this tune right here, and it shows you Caucasian women. Yeah. So what's this guy got? Still very difficult for them to understand that one can be black and build a brilliant civilization at the same time. No. And it, we was Egyptians. Well, anybody else do anything? Because that would have been if we're gonna go with okay, so that was totally non-related to you black people. What have you done in West Africans and everything? Not much. Capture, sell your own people. Literates. They know how to write now. Oh yeah, yeah, they know how to write now. Who helped them? Who taught them how to write for the very first time? Don't lie. Yeah, it's very difficult for Negroids to understand, but imagine the same statement back to Caucasians. It's still very easy for them to understand that one can be Caucasian and build brilliant civilizations at the same time, like our modern one, and we're spacemen and we're using computers and all kinds of things that don't have anything to do with Negroids, but we let them use our stuff and we try to treat them as equal as possible. But whenever you have things like this happen, it just knocks a notch out of that whole thing. And man, 50 years worth of uh, trying just goes down the drain. In fact, much more than that, because 50 years ago they weren't going around trying to say we was, because you weren't. The first modern man appeared in Africa 200,000 years ago. Not true. Homo sapiens in Jebel Irhoud cave itself in Morocco, they found another body here just last year, and it dates to 315,000 BC. So it's incredible, yeah. And that lineage came out of Africa too, and spread out, and mated with Neanderthal, all kinds of stuff, had reintegration back in and out of Africa. They talk about, they founded genetics and everything, and it's all about them and the Caucasians of North Africa and Carthaginians and all these guys that didn't have anything to do with black people, and black people didn't know they existed. But now, due to jealousy, they want to try to tell you that they were. And they weren't even involved. They were the white people, or the Caucasians, if you want to go with somebody that's tanned and swarthy. So 200,000 years, 315,000 years ago, this man was certainly black because of the sunny weather in Africa. Okay, well, there's sunny weather in Texas, and I just get tanned. And Caucasians have been living just above this area forever. And they're not really that different. Causes a big problem, doesn't it, when you think about that, whenever you try to think that white people or Caucasians are somehow vampires that can't stand the sun, and then you see lifeguards and pro golfers and things, and they're giggling like hell at you. And what about the current population? What kind of people do you think they are? Negroid, Mongoloid, Oriental, or Caucasian, or Amerindian? What are the people that are living there now? The Arabs that are living there now. Right. We'll just continue. The Copts are probably closest to the original Egyptians. So, do you think we were chasing the stag nude in the jungle all this time, 200,000 years? Well, no, actually, there's no sign of Negroids showing up in the archaeological record. That would all be just in one pocket of Africa. You weren't lollygagging around anywhere. And funny, whenever the Bantu expansion and things happen, now they've found some proto-Negroids, and it seems like the oldest one they found is 9100 BC. It was it Iwaliru, and it's not even a fully formed Negroid, but it's a proto-Negroid. Like, whenever they look at this 315,000, they don't say proto-Homo sapiens. But at 9,100 BC, Negroids were Proto-Homo sapiens. In fact, the earliest one that they call Negroid stock is like 4,600 BC. I'm not making this up. This is what they found, you know. Maybe they dig one day and they'll find out something more. But they won't ever say you were Egyptian. And yeah, this is the way blacks looked then and look today. In fact, that's a fancy bow for them to have had at that time, and that would have been after integration there. And you don't chase stags. Stag's a word for a male deer, and they don't have male deers in Africa. And the livestock and the goats and all that stuff that's there now that you raise for foods all came from Proto-Indo-Europeans and Anatolian farmers and stuff, and the Sumerians and the grains and everything too. And so I don't think you were hunting a stag nude in the jungle all this time. I think you were hunting all kinds of game in there, though. Monkeys all the way up. They still eat monkey meat to this day. And each other. But do I think that you were these people were Egyptians? No, definitely not. Oh my God. Talk about Photoshop Negro. Can you see that good? Okay, well, what I want you to notice when you see it is that I'm darker than those people. That's your Hyksos. These right here, the Hyksos coming in with their kids and everything. But if you'll look, he put a blender on it from right here over. That's what he's done, because you notice how this guy's color, and then, oh my God, that's the color of the Egyptians. Well, what did he do here? Oh, he actually colored them in black. Yeah. He says, of course not. You want me to give up a Negro real quick and show you? By the way, these are the people that brought, even though they show they have donkeys here, they were the ones that brought horses with them into the area, and the composite bow, and it's what allowed Egypt to last as long as it did. In fact, the Hyksos could have taken over easy. They co-ruled for a while and then ditched it out. This is your Exodus out of the Bible too, by the way, and one of their names was Yaqub Baal, and Yaqub El, and that's Jacob. Yeah, Jacob and Esau are Caucasian twins. There's no black people in the Bible whatsoever. It's not your religion. Just like there's no black people in the Hindu religion. Oh, there's the god Kali. That's a symbolism. And they're very dark too. And any of their dark doesn't have anything to do with Negroids either. Yeah, isn't that terrible? Let's see if I can find this picture again real quick. Let's see. Hyksos in E. We'll all be darned. Because a minute ago, this is the exact same picture, same ram. Whenever we click back in just a second, you'll notice the guy with the bow, 4 ladies, blue, red, blue, white, red, blue, donkey before, kids on a donkey, pattern, okay, guy leaned forward, guy leaned back, Hyksos written right there, and foreign rulers come to the land and they bring him a bunch of animals, which are gazelles, which were all over the Levant at one time, and lions too. That's the reason you see them in Sumerian art and everything too. But anyhow, and then there's that Egyptian looking sword that they claim to be the Egyptians, but there's these people that are wielding it right there. And if you'll look, those guys are about the color of me. Yeah. And the women are pale. But back here now, they're nobility, so they aren't farmers, and they're all pale. Yeah. So I'm going to go back, but I want you to look at what they photoshopped here and how that looks. That's just red ochre and tan, and the women are the same color, like in the Egyptian thing, right? That was a Kala. Yeah, look what they did. Isn't that disgusting? Of course not. Did you Photoshop it? Of course not. Of course so. Look how he gets darker, darker. Look at this guy that was about Egyptian color here, this gazelle, and now look how he's almost black. Look at this guy, and this guy is darker than the Egyptians over here were, and what has he done to the Egyptians? Lean forward, lean back. blue, red, blue, white, red, blue. There's a donkey in front. Kid, donkey, kids on a donkey. Blue diamonds. There's the thing. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the sword, sword. This is the exact same picture. The only problem is he photoshopped this to try to fool somebody. And what's disgusting about that is it shows you that he damn well knows, and that he's got to fake something to try to even get deluded Negroids to believe it. How pathetic. Let's continue. We are all the same human, and the skin of our color and our morphology is only a matter of geography. No, that's not true. People in cold country tend to be white. Oh, really? How about Eskimos? No, it just shoots the hole in that one, doesn't it? For the Eskimos are much darker than your Egyptian color right there. Oh, will it take some time? The Eskimos have been there a long damn time. There's been a lot of black people, living up in like Baltimore, in America and stuff for a long time, a couple of generations and stuff. Do you think they're turning into white people? We're not all the same human. Some people, like Amerindians, were quite primitive and didn't have it going on as well as the Caucasians did, and these Caucasian Egyptians we're talking about. Some people were even less advanced than that. They come from West Africa, and they were called Negroids. Yeah, and they're now trying to lie about their history, and it's disgusting and racist. And so he shows a snowboarder. Oh, so this is your white guy. I'd like to mention that that guy can get quite tan, but yeah, in fact, you can actually get a sunburn while skiing. But that's another thing. Blacks don't know about skiing. And people in a hot country like Africa tend to be black. Really? Because North Africa was always Caucasians. In fact, I'll show it to you in a minute if you don't yourself. Those Libyans in that picture that you tried to pass off. Africa is the native continent of black people. Yeah, only continent they were on. Black people, Negroids, right there, only continent they're on. Aborigines, they're actually Denisovans. India and stuff, yeah, they're actually Denisovans. Island people in Fiji, they're actually Denisovans. And so here's the logic. Check this out. Africa is the native continent of black people, and Egypt is in Africa. Does it make sense? This is the stupid thing where they try to go, well, black people are in Africa and Egypt's in Africa. Egypt's bordering on North Africa and into the Levant. And from the Delta, you can walk right into the Levant. From the Delta, or anywhere up the Nile, you have to go across 250 miles of Sahara Desert before you run into cannibalistic Negroids. And does that make any sense to you? If it doesn't, you're lost, and who cares? So let's look at this picture here real quick. Here's Egypt, right up here, right? But all this area was all Caucasians to the Horn of Africa. In fact, if you look up Caucasian race, just wiki it, and it'll show you the places that they were all at. And then all of these cubes, all of this was all Caucasians too, above the Sahara. And this is where Negroids came from, right in here, around what we call the Ivory Coast. And they didn't even know Egypt existed. So he says, now he tries to tell you again, this picture is real. And I've just showed you that B, it's not. It's a drawn depiction off of a wall, and it's showing people paying homage to Ramses. And Egyptians aren't doing that. They have their own separate wall. They don't put them together. You'll notice the Egyptians don't get put in with this little rabble that comes in. Those people are giving a homage to him, and Egyptians don't have to do that. They're the ones that are escorting them in. Right. That picture is fake. Herodotus went to Egypt during 5th century BC. Yeah, oh, you don't want to go to Herodotus. This is what he said. As far as me, I judge the Colchians to be a colony of the Egyptians because, like them, they are black with woolly hair. Look, I could pull this up for you right now, but he doesn't say it at all. He says, the Colchians are Egyptians. I noticed this myself before anyone is told, but then what tipped me off was that they have dark skin and curly hair. Not black skin and woolly hair, dark skin and curly hair. And, oh, you've got to get the next sentence, black people, because it damns you. Because he says, and that's not unique to any of the people around them, but their textiles are exactly like the Egyptians, and they practice circumcision just like the Ethiopians do. And when they talked about Ethiopians, they weren't talking about Abyssinia, which is recently called Ethiopia, and these admixed people that are there that are at least 40% Caucasian. No, he was never talking about that, for certain. I think this is going to go to a part 2, guys. This is all he also said to explain the water of the Nile does not come from the melting of the ice. It is certain that the natives of the country are black with heat. He's adding 2 sentences together there real quick, and I'm guessing I'm going to stop it right after this. And what we're going to do first is we're going to look at Ethiopia. Ethiopia. This is the Greeks, Ethiopia. Now, they talk about it being there, but they also talked about Ethiopia in the works of Homer, twice in the Iliad, and 3 times in the Odyssey, and none of those were up here in this area of Meroe that they show. Now I'm going to show you this picture here, and everywhere that's brown has Ethiopians in it in their stories. And we damn well know there weren't admixed Negroids running all around lollygagging anywhere. So what does Ethiopia mean? Well, it meant sunburnt faces. All of Africa was called Libya. You don't see the word Africa here. It's later that, due to a fight over here near Carthage, that a white man is named Africa and the continent is named after him, and then Libya is just the area that's right here now. Now, Ethiopians are just up here, but the Microbians, a beautiful white people that are tall and live long lives, are right there, he says. But where he talked about the snow, what's about that is because they didn't know where the Nile ended, and if you look, sub-Saharan Africa doesn't even exist. See how it's just cut off and rounded? Yeah, at best you might get a little bit of this right here. They don't know really what's going on here. They just rounded it off. There's a lot of pictures you can see this in too. But they didn't know where the Nile ended. In fact, no one could tell anybody where the Nile ended, including Negroids, until, was it Dr. Livingstone, I presume? Stanley found him and so on. And he had found that it comes out of Lake Victoria, and it leads out to 3 Great Lakes there. There's Lake Malawi, Lake Tanganyika, and then Victoria, and it comes out of it. So, but look here in the map, and they show you the Nile. Now, the Nile is what Greeks called it. Nilus is a river god in the Greeks. The name that the Caucasian Egyptians used was the river Ar. So if you were going to name them off the river that lived around, they'd be the Arians. Oops. But see how the Nile bends over here and it goes to Atlas and the Atlas Mountains? The other maps that are here shows Atlantes is right by the Atlas Mountains. And this is where they thought it was at the time. And nobody on this map has to do with Negroids whatsoever. In some of the maps, right over here at Indians, they say Eastern Ethiopians, because they would talk about them as being just like that. But what is that? So, they also talked about somebody being from Susa, and Susa's way over here. When they talked about the Greek Memnon story, and everybody says, oh, he's an Ethiopian, there was black people, and it's like, no, he's from Susa. Yeah, that's right after Tigris and Euphrates and the Sumerians with their blue eyes. Like the Egyptians have blue eyes and all their little art. We're going to go to part 2 now, guys. It'll be up in your top left-hand corner. So just click on it, and we'll go straight to part 2. Hey, like, share, and subscribe to this thing if you aren't already. And put a little comment back in the bottom of it here, or come back later and do it. Anyhow, we're going to part 2, top left-hand corner. See you there.